Hi guys, my name is Roger, and ever since I was a teenager, I've always wanted to build my own car. I started this channel to see if an average person, like me, can design and build their own mid-engine car. If you like what you see here in my videos, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you know someone who you think might be interested in my videos, please share the videos with them. I'll be adding a new video every week, and with that out of the way, let's get started with this week's video. Well, some of my parts came in. It's Friday afternoon, so I've tried to order enough stuff to keep me busy through the weekend, but some of it did not come in. I have a few things to do. This missing hose, air conditioner hose, came in today, and what I was expecting was 3 pieces of aluminum connected by rubber tubing. So I'd be able to cut the rubber tubing to whatever length and manipulate the size of it. But what I got was one long metal tube with rubber coating on it to protect it from chafing, I guess. So it's not going to be as easy to manipulate the shape and the length of that as I was hoping. But I have it connected here where it goes, and it runs along close to where it needs to and down to where approximately where the condenser will be for the air conditioner, where it hooks to. So my thoughts are, I'm hoping maybe I can carefully bend and shape that to be exactly what I want it to be and work. If not, I'll just have to cut it and reshape it, resize it, solder or crimp some fittings on it or something and make it what I need it to be. I picked up some air conditioning hose, 2 different diameters, and that should be enough to run from the front to the back of the car. And when the fittings arrive, they didn't come in, that's what I'm missing. I'll be able to cut and splice and figure out the exact lengths for this tubing to run down through the tunnel of the car. I was hoping to work on that this weekend, but I won't be able to, other than I might be able to go ahead and start running some of these lines through the tunnel and see what they look like, how they're going to lay, and know approximate lengths. Also, I haven't been filming this because it's mind-numbing work, but I've started on this wiring harness, figuring out what all these connectors are. I bought a subscription to a website online that has all the drawings, exploded views of the Corvette C7. Along with that, it has wiring harness diagrams. It has a picture or a drawing of every connector, what it looks like, what color wires run to it. So I've been working my way down through all of those photos and on these wiring harnesses, trying to figure out exactly where every connector goes. You can see the tape I have marked. I've labeled what every connector goes to. I've done this connector assembly, this small connector assembly. I have one for the engine and chassis upstairs that I'm working my way through. I'm about halfway through it. And when I finish it, I'll do this large one here in the floor. But once all of those connectors are labeled, so I know exactly where the parts go, I can kind of start laying them out in the car, roughly where they'll go. I may not be able to finalize that until the body's actually on the car, but I need to have an idea where the parts are going to, where the wiring harnesses are going to lay and how they're going to route. But I guess that's it for an update, and I'm going to take these air conditioning lines and pull them down through the center of the car, down through the tunnel, and just lay them in there for now. And then that's probably it for tonight, and I'm going to get back on the wiring harnesses, figuring out the connectors, and then I'll be back down here working on the car again tomorrow. Well, here's the hose routing through the tunnel. This is about 99% of what's going through there. And there are water lines, vacuum lines, brake lines. There will be a clutch line and a power steering line that's not shown here, but I think those two are the only one that's missing. And of course I'll have to make some brackets to neaten all this up because it's not neat at all. But this tunnel area is about half full, and the cables for the shifter will come out here and be mounted above this. And I'll separate that one hot water line from all of the other lines. Make sure they don't get too hot. And coming up front here, right now it's a mess, but get all these hoses cut to the right length and fitted on the fittings that they should be. It'll neaten up some, and most of this will be hidden anyway. But this is showing most of the lines. I still need, this clutch line will have to be cut and spliced and lengthened when I know what fitting goes on the end to mate to the clutch I'll be using. And then I have one supply line going here to the power steering pump. It's not in the tunnel currently. The return line here, I have a line showing as a return line. You'll have to splice those two pieces together somehow, or put a new fitting on the end of this line here and have one continuous hose, which I may do that also. There's a local hydraulic shop that can take care of this for me. But that's what it's looking like. And got some more components, came in yesterday afternoon, and the hard line for one of the hard lines that runs through the tunnel for the supply on the power steering. I've got to cut a length of it and run through the tunnel and shape it to fit. But that's it's a good start. Once everything is run through this tunnel and I can lay out all the brackets to neaten that area up and hold everything in place so it doesn't move, that'll make a big difference. But just wanted to show you the update on this. Well, I took all of my hoses or lines to the local hydraulic shop today. They're going to put the ends, or one end, on the two air conditioning lines and one end on the two power steering lines. And I will bring those home, cut the other end of the lines to length, and mark the rotation of the second fitting so the lines lay in there correctly and line up like they should. Then I'll take those assemblies back to the hydraulic shop again and have them crimp the second end on the assembly so they'll be finished. I'll bring them home and install them. But I took them today at lunch and dropped them off, and I'll pick them up tomorrow at lunch and bring them home tomorrow night and start cutting them to length and getting everything ready to finalize. I also stopped and picked up some more water lines for the heater core. I have the ones here in the front installed, and I didn't have quite enough left to finish the rears, which come up and connect here to the water pump. These aren't long enough. That was the drops or pieces I had left over. They're just a little short. So I picked up some more lines, and I'm going to go ahead and install these, cut them to length, and get everything to fit and plumb those in. I also picked up some hose clamps so I can just have hose clamps in all the positions ready to snug everything down. And I think that's about all I've got I can work on tonight. But let's go ahead and get started doing that. For the last several days, well, actually more than a week, I've been spending many hours on these wiring harnesses, and what I've been doing is going through all the wiring diagrams that I bought online and looking at each connector, the size, the shape, the colors of the wires, and trying to figure out exactly whatever connector goes to and labeling that. And I think I've completed. There's one or two connectors I didn't figure out, but everything else is done. You can see all the little pieces of tape on these connectors up through here. And there are multiple wiring harnesses. There are at least two I know of I don't have. I don't have the one wiring harness for under the instrument panel, and I'm missing the ones for the fuel injectors. But other than that, I think everything is here. Everything is labeled. I have searched for part numbers on some of these electronic components and figured out what about half of them are. So I have a general idea of what's going where. I'll have to go through this wiring harness eventually and delete the connectors and the wires that I'm not going to use. There'll be a lot of things I'm not going to use, but we'll work on that later. I am missing one of the fuse boxes. There are two fuse boxes. I do have this one here, which went in the rear of the car on the Corvette. The other one, there's one under the front where all of the wiring harnesses plug into. Since my engine is in the rear, I may have both of these fuse boxes in the rear of the car, but we'll work that out when we get to it. I just got home from the hydraulic shop. I have my hydraulic fittings here. I'm gonna install all of this in the car, cut the hoses to length, and mark the rotation on all the fittings, take them back and have them crimped. So I guess let's get busy installing these in the car and cutting them to length and marking the rotations. Wanted to show you guys what I just did here. I've installed all these lines, and I have cut them to length, and I have turned them rotationally into the hoses because of the curl in the hose where they were on the spool, so that the curve works in my favor. And everywhere there's going to be a crimp, a solder joint, or anything like that, I have marked rotationally. I think this is called clocking. So when they go to crimp these and solder on them, they will align them perfectly like I have them now, so when I bring them back they'll fit in the car exactly. And you can see the routing. I have both of the AC lines into the compressor. They come down here and go around this belt and pulley. They have plenty of clearance. There's probably 2 inches of clearance there. They fit in between the tank and the engine nicely. There's plenty of clearance. They come around and route between the radiator hoses and all the way up to the front of the car. And one of those lines comes here and mates up to this assembly, which goes to the evaporator. And as you can see, all of those rotational alignments are marked. The other hose continues on up here to the front and will mount to the condenser, which will be here either in front of or behind the radiator somewhere. And I'm going to leave this hose long because I don't have any of this mounted yet. I'll have to come back later and cut that off and put the end on it. And this is the end. It will go on it eventually. And the other hoses I have are for the power steering. And this hose was a factory hose. We crimped an end on it to go to the rear of the car. This hose I haven't cut to length yet because I don't have the fitting. It hasn't came in yet. I'm still waiting on DHL. Their tracking's horrible. I was expecting this today, but it's not here yet. But I can cut this hose and mark all of these alignments once that end comes in. Those hoses continue down through the tunnel also. They are here. They go under the fuel crossover tube and snake around here. I'm going to make some kind of a clamp to hold this next to the tank. This one's well under the belt and pulleys. It has a good inch clearance. This one's going to be a little bit tighter, maybe a 1/2 inch clearance. But when I fasten this hose up against this tank with a bracket, it should have plenty of clearance. There's no way it can move over and get into that belt or pulley. And those hoses continue around and go to the back of the power steering pump here. That is all of the hoses that I'm able to do for now. There's a brake line missing in that bunch in the tunnel. I haven't made it. I just don't have it installed right now. But other than possibly some wiring, I'm going to try to keep most of my wires on the outside of the car against these big tubes. There may be a little bit of wiring in here. It comes to some kind of lighting or something inside the console, but I don't know yet. The 2 cables for the steering or for the gear shifter will come up here above all of this, and I will neaten this up tremendously. That'll be something I work on this weekend. And I like what I'm seeing. All the lines lay good. Once I get my mounting brackets made and put in that tunnel to hold everything in perfect alignment, I can separate the hoses, the hot ones and the cold ones, and keep them away from each other as far as possible in that small area. I have 2 of these hoses I can return tomorrow and have them finished up. The other one, because I'm waiting on a fitting, I cannot. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these hoses out, except the one I'm still waiting on a fitting for, and get them ready to take back to the hydraulic shop tomorrow. And we'll leave that last one in the car until that fitting comes in. So